Hey everybody! Welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm Lailani and this is my channel, The Magical Solution. We are live here tonight, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on The Magical Solution on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. And tonight I'm super excited because I get to bring back a good friend of mine who I know you all remember because you all blew up my inbox after our live was over, telling me, I want you to have him back. I hope you bring him back. And so I did. Professor Charles Porterfield. Now, if you don't remember who he is, let me give you a quick rundown. Professor Charles Porterfield is an old-fashioned, no-nonsense, Old Testament reader and root worker. He is the co-author of Hoodoo Bible Magic, Secrets of Scriptural Sorcery, and author of A Deck of Spells, Hoodoo Playing Card Magic in Rootwork and Conjure, and The Sporting Life, How to Help Yourself with Hoodoo from the Streets to the Sheets. He writes, teaches, and lectures on Hoodoo and Conjure to help preserve and pass on the roots of work, as well as consults, prescribes, and divine works for those in need. He currently lives in Denton, Texas with his wife, children, and grandchildren. So, of course, without further ado, let's bring him on. Charles. Hey, Professor.
Shalom, shalom.
So thank you so much for joining me tonight once again. Everyone loved you the last time when we talked about the playing cards, and I just had to have you back to talk about your other passion, the other thing that you're amazing at, which is Jewish mysticism and Jewish folk magic.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it, and it's an honor to be here, and I enjoyed it greatly last time, and hopefully we'll have a lovely time this time as well. And so, hello to everybody. Um,
Yes. Let's see who's in the chat for now. We only got a few people. Hey, Rob. Hey, Christy. A few people. So we're going to be working our way up. I see 10 viewers already. They're just quiet. Hey, Misty. So let's
hello,
get to
hello,
it.
friends.
Let's get to it. Let's talk about this. So I brought you on the show because I had gotten an amazing reading from you. And this reading was so unique. I've never gotten something like that done before. And it involved playing cards, but it also involved reading from the Torah. Can you kind of explain a little bit about that process? I mean, if we're allowed to talk about that.
Sure, but first let's start someplace else.
Okay.
Let's start with this. So there's going to be the inevitable question of who the hell is this guy? And why should I listen to him? And who is he to talk about this at all? So
Tell him, Professor, tell
so
him.
let's start there. So I am as a number of people are. I am a diasporic Jew, Ashkenazi. I live in Texas. I come from a line of Prussian Jews who did undergo pretty serious assimilation. And so I am what might be termed a child of bondage. I'm one of the ones that said, you know what? Let's not be assimilated. Let's go back to who we are. I am not a rabbi. I did a little time in rabbinic college, but went another way. So I am not a rabbi. I am certainly not your Rav in any sense of that. I am simply uh, a Jew. I am also a folk magic practitioner. Part of my path and interest does involve, therefore, Jewish folk magic and Jewish mysticism. And so that's who I am, and that's why the hell I'm dare to come up here and talk about this.
And
So
your girl Lailani wouldn't just pick up any fool off the street to talk about these subjects. Come on, I know
well,
how to vet them. I know how to vet them.
you never know. You never know. Maybe I am a fool off the street, but at least I'm an honest fool. So what you were talking about is a Torah reading, and actually, it does not involve playing cards. You got two separate readings with me. And so, in a Torah reading, what happens is this: there is a folk magical belief, and it has some relationship to the Kabbalah, which we'll be talking about more in depth later. You must understand that on every day of the year, there is a particular piece of Torah that is being read or prayed or studied. whether that's being studied in the study hall or prayed in the synagogue or at people's homes or just read over and contemplated. So the idea here is we take your birthday, we see what piece of Torah is aligned to it. That is the piece of Torah that was for study and prayer and contemplation on your birthday. And then the folk tradition is that therefore there are messages in that piece of Torah, as well as to some extent in the entire parsha, which is for the week. So we go in, we have to take, for most people, well, not everybody, but for most people, we have to convert your birthday from the Gregorian calendar to the Hebrew calendar. And then we have to know your time of birth because in Judaism, the new day starts at sunset. So, in other words, I'm born on March the 16th, but I was born at 11:52 p.m. Well, then we have to go one day more. Okay? And then we go in and we look at the various things that are said. In those sections, we look at the writings of the sages. We look at Rashi's writings on the Talmud. We look at folk traditions around it. We look at what day it is of the week. As an example, those born on Shabbos are felt or believed to possess two souls. So we need to know if you're born on Shabbos. What are the other historic occurrences of that date? What else happened on that date? Specifically towards Jewish identity and Judaism. In other words, like not, so-and-so won the Indianapolis 500. No, we don't care about that. But we do care about other things, and we look at all of that, and then we come up with a reading. And that reading starts off with very broad statements, somewhat ambiguous, but broad, and they are about your life. Why am I here? What am I doing? What am I supposed to know? And then as we go through that reading, it gets very, very granular. And so it gets down into things like what foods you shouldn't eat or should eat, what colors are good for you, what gemstones might be good for you, or metals like, you should probably wear gold but not wear silver, or wear copper but not wear gold, etc. And down into other components about that. The problem with a reading like this, and the only criticism I've ever gotten, and I've gotten it numerous times, is the criticism I get is, where the hell were you 10 years ago? Or where were you 15 years ago? Where were you when I needed you? Because the thing about a reading like this is it's talking about your entire life. Right. It's not really a form of divination, right? We're not coming with a question like, should I do this or should I do that, or what's going to work out with my job? We're looking at our life.
It's already been written. You're just reading it.
And so therefore, we're often talking about things that the person who's getting the reading is going, already did that. That's over. Or that happened when I was 12, or that happened when I was 21, or that happened whenever. And that's fine, because sometimes we're trying to talk about things that haven't happened yet. And again, the concept here is this shouldn't be seen as some sort of, pre-med, like, that's it. There's no way out. You've got this mark on you, so it's gonna. No, these are signs. Okay. In other words, if you have a lot of marks on you about poverty, okay, that doesn't mean you have to be poor. It means you understand. Okay, I have that mark on me, so maybe I need to be someone who's going to put more money away, or maybe I need to create savings for myself, or maybe I need to be careful about investment or things that might lead me to a place of poverty because I have that particular mark in my reading on me.
Right.
As opposed to, no, you're going to be poor, screw it.
Yeah, I mean, you guys, that reading was amazing. It was an amazing reading. So I highly encourage anyone who's watching tonight, if you're interested in getting a reading from Professor Porterfield, you definitely should. It's really awesome. You had mentioned when you were speaking about your credentials, that you practice Jewish folk magic and Jewish mysticism. Now, is there a difference? I thought it was one and the same, or is it kind of like high magic versus low magic?
So, is there a difference? That's a very fine line to draw. Obviously, the magic of a people is their magic. So the mystical acts, mystical work of a people is theirs. But then we come into a concept of a more folk tradition. So what I mean by that is Jews are also diasporic peoples. And being diasporic peoples, it means sometimes we have been separated from the center of our culture. And we have developed certain magical folk practices over here or over there or wherever, some of which may have components of a more dominant culture, at least in a component of that we're trying to address something the dominant culture is doing. Uh, but that's a little different than say study of the Zohar or study of Kabbalah or a more serious type practice where this is a life thing that you're doing. So what I want to do is start some trouble. So let me start some trouble. Here's the thing I want to start off by saying about, quote, Jewish mysticism, Jewish magic. You cannot interact with Jews and with their culture, with their magics, with their spirituality, and not, well, you can't do it effectively. You cannot effectively interact with that and not understand that Jews have also been under the yoke of colonization and supersessionism. So
So are
let
you
me.
are you saying that it is a closed practice?
I'm not saying it's a closed practice per se. I'm saying it certainly has components of being a closed practice, or at least let's say that it is a pathed practice. In other words, there are certain things you need to do that. There are lots of people who are involved in what is perhaps as a misnomer called ATRs, but it's a generalized term we use, African traditional religions. And as in general, because there's some jackasses always in every situation, but
Always.
in general, we all acknowledge that you cannot go and practice, uh, you know, Lukumi as an example, or Santeria, to use another name, without going through certain stages, certain
Right.
things that have to happen. Okay? You need to do this. There are certain levels of initiation. You can't just say, oh, you know, Chongo came to me in a dream, so now I'm crowned by Chongo. It's like, no, you actually have to go and find out if Chongo is on your head, and you have to actually go through the process of
I got a tarot reading and found out that I'm the daughter of Oshun.
Oshun, right? Because I liked, a Beyonce video, so now I'm Oshun, right? And we accept that, we understand that. But there are paths on, let's say, study of the Cabal, okay? And like you should this, that, and the other thing. You should at least be 42 years old. You shouldn't study it by yourself. You should start here, and you should do that. And people go, oh, I don't need all that. I don't have to do all that. I can just take as I please. And it's like, okay, yes, you can take as you please, all right, but that doesn't mean you're doing the thing correctly,
Right.
all right.
Right.
Well, but I saw Madonna, and Madonna does whatever, and so now I can do Kabbalah. Well, that sounds just as ridiculous as I saw a Beyonce video, so now I can do whatever I want with Oshun, and I don't have to go to elders, and I don't have to respect traditions, and I don't. Now, if you want to call that a closed practice, that doesn't seem like a closed practice to me. That seems like there is a pathway, right? There is a
Yes.
pathway.
Path.
In fact, the most like let's talk about the most serious pathway of being involved with Judaic practice is you could fucking convert, couldn't you?
Actually, that was my
Right?
next question. Like, do you have to be Jewish in order to practice Jewish practices, or can you be an outsider?
Well, again, what do we mean by outsider? If we mean I'm going to take Jewish practices and I'm just going to do whatever the fuck I want with them, however the fuck I want to do it, without any sort of acceptance or any sort of understanding or any sort of approach to how that comes from Judaism, how that is a part of the Jewish people, how that is a part of a Jewish perspective. And by the way, I also don't give a shit about Jewish people, right? Then nah, you're not. You can do that. You know, you can
Yeah.
do that. I mean, look, this is America. You can do whatever you want, right?
But you're trash. Let's be real. You're
Okay.
trash.
I mean, I don't know if you're trash or not, but I know you're screwing it up. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I know you're not really doing it at some level. Now, does that mean, therefore, everybody should run off and convert to Judaism? Oh, God, no. Oh, Hashem, please. No, we're cool. Um, but it does mean you have to. So this is the way I term it. So I am also a practitioner of hoodoo, as you know, because you had me on the show for that. And what I tell people constantly about hoodoo is this. Although hoodoo is a melange practice, although it does have components of it from other place, its core is African. It belongs to black people. They are the final arbitrators on it. If you are allowed in, you are a fucking guest. And if you want to practice hoodoo and traditional southern United States conjure, as opposed to, say, English conjure or British conjure, and you have no concern for the struggles of black people, what black people are going through in America. You want access to the ancestors, but you don't give a crap about the descendants and what's going on with them. And you might even have a sort of laissez-faire, well, it's not for me to say, or I don't want to get involved. Then get the fuck out of hoodoo, right? Stop using it. And so for me, that's the same line about Judaic magical and mystical practices, right? If you don't give a crap about how, first of all, it's context. How does this fit the hell in? Okay? And where is this from? And
I
here's the
always say
problem.
context matters. Context matters.
And here's the problem. Here's how we get here. Okay? I can tell you exactly how we get here, and it's about colonization, and it's about supersessionism. If you doubt the power of colonization, all you have to do is look at what has happened to Jews. Jews, we have people who are not Jews. We have people who are very concerned about colonization. We have people who are very concerned about oppressive dominant culture. We have people who are very concerned about that, and these same people say phrases like Judeo-Christian. There's no such goddamn animal. Okay? There's more likely that there are unicorns than there are Judeo-Christians. Okay? Because there's not a thing. There are Christians who absorbed Judaic book, practice, etc., and made it their own thing. There are people who feel like this about colonization who say Abrahamic religions. Now, what do I mean by that? Do I mean that that's just wrong and nasty of them? No, what I mean is you've been fooled. You've been sold the bill of goods. Colonization is so goddamn powerful, that you now associate Jews with their conquerors. You associate Jews with Christians because Christians came in and, no offense, basically stole all this shit, changed it around, renumbered it, put books of holy texts in different orders, changed days that they're supposed to be holy days into different dates. Okay, oh, it's Sunday, it's not Friday, Saturday. No, screw that. Changed rules, changed modes of living, actively stated in the new book that they are de-Judaizers. They are here to de-Judaize the practice, and you have been sold the bill of goods. You now associate them with their oppressors, with the people that colonized them. So that's not my sad story about Jews. That's my watch the fuck out. Because if they did it to us, they'll do it to you. And there will come a time where your practices and your culture and your language and your beliefs are so associated because they have been taken by this group of peoples that you're part and parcel of it.
Yep.
Well, no, that's not true, Professor, because Jews and Christians are basically the same. They believe the same things.
Okay, let's go down the list real quick here since we're talking about Jewish mysticism. Jews, hell, no, don't have one. Devil, no, we don't have a Luciferian. We don't have a Luciferian guy with a bifurcated tail and a pitchfork. No, don't got that. Original sin, no, don't got that too. Tripartite deity, oh, that's fucking forbidden. Like that's right out the goddamn door forbidden. Okay? Let me give you an example. Within normative Judaic practice and normative Judaism, I am completely allowed, should they welcome me, to pray in a mosque. I am forbidden from praying in a Christian church. Why? Because, and no one's going to like what I have about to say, the Jewish perspective at the end of the day is that Christians are pagans. Now, right there, I made an enemy of everyone because all the Christians went, fuck you, and all the pagans went, we don't fucking want them, fuck you, okay? But there's a tripartite God who births himself through himself so that he can die and be reborn because he's his own dad. That's the Holly King or the Oak
I was gonna
King
say that's a hero's journey if I haven't heard one, right?
or Zeus or some shit you're talking about there. And I'm not putting any of those down and saying those are bad or wrong. I'm saying that's not our belief system. That's not our practice. So part of the problem when we talk about Jewish mysticism and Jewish magic, whether it be folk magic or more ceremonialized magic, is that you have had thousands of years of other people coming in and saying, well, basically a Jew walks up going, oh, and they go, what's that? Oh, this is my belief in the divine and a national identity and a tribal sense of self. Where'd you get it? Oh, we got it on our own from God. And then the guy goes, yeah, that's mine. That's mine. That's
But let me change the
mine.
cover really quick. Let me just change the color.
Perfect example. Perfect example. They don't say First Testament and Second Testament. They don't say, no, all of a sudden it's old. It's old, and your book is old, and your book
so
is
yesterday,
and our book is new and fab, and we have a great new character, and you're gonna love him, and he turns pineapple juice into milk and does all sorts of fabulous stuff. If you go to Europe and the Mediterranean, and you go to cathedrals, very, very old, I'm not talking about new cathedrals, I'm talking about medieval and before cathedrals, you will see often, not at every one, but at a lot of them, two statues outside. They are statues of women. One woman is carved aged. She has a broken staff. Her eyes are often bound by a piece of cloth. She has a scroll or a book that's in disorder. It's coming apart. Sometimes she's sitting in a repose of grief or weakness. She is called synagoga. The other is a younger woman, buxom, firm-breasted. Her eyes are not bound. Her staff is not broken. Her book or her scrolls are in her arm in perfect order. She's looking out in sort of a, positive way. She is called ecclesiastia. In other words, the old and the new. Synagoga, the synagogue. That's the Jewish thing, right? Oh, she's so old and beat down and blind and her staff is broken and her book's fucked up, right? And now our new homegirl here, she got it going, okay? She's got it going. All of her fucking shit's in perfect order and her hair's great. Her fucking eyebrows are on fleck. She looks great and she's hot. Yeah. Okay. So that's a perfect example of what I'm trying to talk about. So how does this creep into, like right now, right here, where we're talking about Jewish mysticism? It means there are a lot of people from a lot of sources that, quote, teach the Kabbalah. Very, very popular. The Kabbalah this, the Kabbalah that. And first of all, a lot of them aren't fucking Jews.
Yeah, you see it a lot in occultism. It's been way absorbed in occultism. And the way that they spell it, there's 3 different spellings. You have the QU, you have the K, you have the...
So there's a very famous ceremonial musician who I will not name. He's no longer with us, but he rose to a lot of prominence in the 60s and 70s. And he actually stated of the Kabbalah and teaching it, he said when he found the Kabbalah, the Jews weren't even using it anymore. Okay, first of all, you found my shit? Like my shit was just laying around, and when I found his couch, he wasn't sitting on it, so I totally got to take it out of his house. All right.
That's
And
crazy.
second of all, could that have been because maybe the Jews you were talking to weren't studying Kabbalah because of a variety of reasons, but you didn't talk to the broader body of Judaism, right? Of Jewish peoples, okay? So we have got a lot of problems with that because everybody wants it, but nobody. Now, does that again mean you must convert to Judaism? You must go to Tel Aviv to study? No, it doesn't necessarily mean that, but it means the further that is taken away from its Jewish source, the more questionable what you're doing, right? When I made Ocha, African and Latina diasporic peoples weren't even practicing Santeria. What the fuck? Fuck you, right? Okay. When I did whatever, okay, when I took this thing, oh, those people would just, they didn't need it anymore. Fuck it. In other words, you have a really great excuse for being a thief. Okay?
Yeah.
And so what I'm saying to people is I'm not trying to discourage you or saying, hey, it's a closed practice, go fuck off. What I'm trying to say is you need to use some sensibility about this. You need to have, and the problem is that 7 times out of 10, and that may, I'm sorry, I don't have the statistical data to prove that, but 7 times out of 10, these are people that are very concerned about that issue in other practices. But they're not concerned about that issue when it comes to Jewish practices because they have accepted the bill of goods that Jews are Christians and Jews are oppressors and Jews are colonizers and Jews are not an indigenous people. We just sprang out of the fucking earth someplace. We don't matter, and we're patriarchal, and we're everything that I hate about Christianity. Oh, okay, cool. All right. And that's just not the way that is. So now let's get down into it. Am I allowed to do Jewish practices as a non-Jew? That's the hot question we're kind of dancing around. All right. Well, first of all, why?
Yeah.
Why?
What's the context? How does it fit in?
Why do you want to?
Why do you want it?
Well, I'm called to it. Okay, called by what? Okay. I'm called to use Judaic things but not be a Jew? That's a little weird.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, because there's no such thing as a cultural appropriation. Okay.
Yeah.
So you're probably going to be making money off of this at some point.
Okay.
You know, I mean, because the world is a movable feast and I can take whatever the fuck I want. Okay. That's super always worked out really well. So my question is, why are you drawn? Because I'm a Jew. Okay, great. Okay, well, then what's the problem? Or, well, I don't know who to go to. Well, start by going to other Jews. Well, but I have issues with the rabbinate. Well, I didn't tell you to go to a rabbi. Okay? Like, Jewish folk magic is primarily not being practiced by rabbis. Okay? In fact, our great rabbi Maimonides would have fucking looked down his nose at you and gone, what the fuck? Why are you...
So then who are the figureheads of the more mystical, magical side of Judaism, if not the rabbis?
Well, how about your great-grandmother? I mean, you know, if we're talking about Jewish folk magic practices here, folk magic exists with the folk, with the people.
With the people, with the culture.
Right.
Yeah.
But then you always have people who are like, well, but I don't want that. That's superstitious. Oh, so let me tell you a couple of things. Terrorist is what the big army calls the little army. Cult is what the big church calls the little church. And superstition is what the big magician calls the little magician. Okay. Well, but I want the fancy pajamas, Professor. I want to be able to go into the parsha, into the garden. I want to approach the highest Setharoth of the fucking tree of life and be one with God. And I'm like, okay. First of all, the fuck is wrong with you? You want to be dissolved into holy flame? That's weird. I would have thought you wanted to have a lover and maybe have some kids, or maybe not have kids, or I don't know, build a house or something, or write some books. And you want to be sublime with fucking holy flame. Wow. Okay. Boy. Whoo. So next, the problem with that is, okay, that's what you want. Well, that's normatively that takes a lifetime, and may not even be completed in this lifetime. Okay. So, what are you trying? Well, I'm trying to get there now. Well, sure. So maybe you have the American disease, more. Right? I want
More
more.
and now. Yep.
More and now.
More
Right?
and now. That's so American. It's so
But
true.
again, you can't take the apple out of the skin without cutting the skin.
Right.
Right? And so what we have is we have a situation where a lot of people want Jewish practices, Jewish mysticism, Jewish wisdom,
But they don't
Jewish
want the
insight.
Jews. They don't want
But
the people.
they don't want the Jews, right? Or they want to cast the Jews in a villainous role. And it's like, okay, well, let's say for a minute that it's all true. I mean, it's not, but fuck. Let's say it's all true and that actually I am a reptile. And I'm cold-blooded, and that's why I live in Texas, because it's so nice and warm. And that the elders of Zion actually control Parker Brothers, and that's like that's the whole thing on Monopoly. Whatever your favorite crazy bit of anti-Semitism is, if that's true, why the hell do you want my shit?
Right. Right.
Right? Like if
The
I'm so
magic
bad
is
and
good enough
dirty,
for you. The
right?
the practices are good enough for you. So
So,
what
but there is an interesting variant on this, and it's between the cousins. Okay, so Muslims are our cousins. All right,
right?
like that's literally that's my cousins, and they're like those are my cousins, and boy do we fight. Okay, but we also get along in a lot of ways too. And as I said, like as an example, I'm allowed to pray in a mosque. A Muslim is allowed to pray in a synagogue, okay? Because we're both like, well, we're not those tripartite fucking pagans over there. Um, and there are things within Islam that advise people to seek out a Jewish sorcerer. Okay, like certain things in the Quran and in other norms, like, oh, you need a Jewish sorcerer because they got that shit down. Okay, and that's different. That's not appropriationism. That's not supersessionism. That's not colonization. That's I've been advised by my culture that this other culture that I am interrelated to has certain insights and certain modes of doing certain things about that, and we also share a lot with our cousins, like the Hamsa, or whether we call it the hand of Miriam or the hand of, what. So, but we still share that. The blue-eyed anti-evil eye tokens. We have a lot in common. We're similar people from a similar place with similar backgrounds when we both originate from and are indigenous to the quote Levant and all of that. So that's a little different. Now, we have a question here, and it says, are we about to talk about the psychedelic rituals of the ancient Mediterranean? No, we're not. But what I will say towards that is, as a small example, marijuana, cannabis, is kosher. It is both seen as a medicine. It is seen as having healing components, and we know that cannabis. And we know this not through some sort of, well, I said and she said, or we told each other, but we actually know this archaeologically, that cannabis was used in some of the temple rituals. Okay. So, yeah, there are some elements of that within the practice to just answer that comment that we had. But this is not what you came for. What you came for is the fancy pajamas. What you wanted is how do I do things. So let's talk about some folk magic traditions.
Yeah.
Here's the other thing. You have to understand that Judaism is around 4,000 years old, 3,800, right in there. It originates out of Mesopotamia in the central civilizations of Ur. And so it's very old. So one of the things that people don't understand is some things that look like religious practices started in different ways. So we have the mezuzah. So what is a mezuzah? Mezuzah is technically a case. It is a scroll case, and it holds scrolls with certain passages, primarily from Deuteronomy, written on it, that is affixed outside the doors of Jewish homes. Also, technically, they are, depending on your level of observance, affixed within the house at doors. So it's not just on the outside of the house, they're also within the house at doorways. On the right-hand side, at an angle. So they are seen within religious practice as being a holy item that directs the Spirit of God to indwell in the place. They bless it. The Spirit of God now is, oh, come in here, we live in here. But they start in ancient Judaic practice as anti-demon amulets. They are wards. They drive away bad spirits. They drive away shadim, which would be Jewish demons, although not at all like Christian demons. They are more of a primordial sort of entities who are vastly different. They're not, down in hell, prodding people with sticks and, doing whatever. But that's a simple example, right? It starts here, and then it is absorbed into the whole. Because what you have to understand is that Judaism is an ethno-religion. It's not
an ethno-religion. Can you explain that a little bit?
So there are several ethno-religions in the world. Judaism is not the only one. And an ethno-religion is, it's not just an ethnicity, and it's not just a religion. Oh, you've got peanut butter in my chocolate. Oh no, you've got chocolate on my peanut butter. It's a Reese's peanut butter cup. This is our religion, but it's also a part of our ethnicity, so it has components of language, song, genetic lines, practices of living.
So by default, that would be folk magical practices.
To some extent. To some extent, yeah. But the point is, like, there are a lot of people that say, hey, if it's so tough being a Jew, just stop being a Jew. And they don't understand that it's not just a religion, right? You can't just stop you can stop practicing the religion. You cannot wear things that show you're observant, right? But that doesn't cease you from being of Jewish descent.
Right.
Okay, so it's an ethno-religion. And because it's an ethno-religion, there are things that we, from an anthropological point of view, like that's always helped everybody, might identify as a folk practice that then becomes a religious practice, and vice versa. Things that start as a religious practice that then disseminate into being a folk practice. So it's pretty goddamn complex. The fact of the matter is Judaism is simply amazingly complicated. Okay? And
no, it sure is. When I was trying to prep for this interview, I'm telling you, Mr. Porter, I'm telling you, Professor, like, I was reading everything that I could possibly get my hands on, and it all was just like another language to me. And when we did our pre-interview and you spoke about how, a lot of times you learn the Kabbalah, you learn the Torah, you learn these things in couplets with someone else.
Yeah, you're supposed
so that you can bounce ideas off of, so that you can kind of, and that makes so much sense, because doing it by yourself, it really is so overwhelming. There's so much. So much.
So the three great texts, if you will, of Judaism are the Torah, the Talmud, and the Zohar. There are many others. There's the writings of the fathers, etc., 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 etc. But we can kind of, sub this down into those are the three. Now, they are not small. Like, okay,
no.
Well, the Torah's right here. Well, the Talmud, like if you stack the Talmud up, all the books of the Talmud up, they're taller than me. You can spend your life studying. In fact, there is something called the Daf Yomi, which basically means a page a day, and it is I won't say it's ritualized or ceremonialized, but it is a practice that we engage in where we study one page of the Talmud every day, and do it together in the study hall and do it together with other friends, etc. And if you study a page, one page, you also understand that the Talmud is often written as two facing pages, an Alf and Bet, an A and a B page. And so if you study one page of the Talmud every day, it takes you 7 years to go through the entire Talmud. And then we finish that and we start a new cycle. And so you can go out and, go to Google and type in Daf Yomi and find out what is the page right now? Like, what are we studying right now? And pick it up, finish it out, and then start it when it starts again on the new 7-year cycle to complete what you didn't finish. But that's 7 years. That's 7 years of studying one page a day.
Wow.
Okay? So, now, then there's the Zohar. The Zohar is absolutely essential to, say, study of the Kabbalah. Now, in all of those, you are instructed that you should have a study buddy. Okay? And in Hebrew, it basically translates back into English as study friend. Okay? This is your pal who you study with. And we are going to study this part of the Torah together. And then maybe later we're studying this part of the Talmud together, the Daf Yomi. Or we're studying the Zohar together. And the reason is slightly different. You are taught that you should study the Talmud with a friend so you don't end up making illogical conclusions about the Talmud, which is
I can see that,
the law, because these are matters of discussions about law. Technically, the Talmud, not even technically, it's just a weird story. So the Talmud is let me start over. The Torah is the written law. The Talmud is the oral law, and it's supposed to always expand and keep growing, etc. Well, why is it written down if it's the oral law? Because at the time after the Roman conquest, when they started killing our rabbis, and primarily rabbis are going to have the province of the Talmud far more than the province of the Torah, and literally, like, we're smuggling rabbis out in coffins and shit so that they can escape. We realized that the oral law was going to get destroyed. So we broke the rule. We were told not to write down the oral law. But we said, well, if we don't, we'll lose it. So we broke the rule and we wrote it down. And boy, it's caused some problems that we did that. But we did it to survive. So you are said to have a study partner when studying the Talmud because it helps you from making illogical conclusions. You are supposed to have a partner when you study the Torah so that you can see the fullness of the Torah, because the Torah is supposed to be understood, examined, studied as if it is literal, metaphorical, contextual, and mystical. And then people say, okay, what's the order? Like, is it literal first, and then it's metaphorical, and then it's contextual, and then it's mystical? And the answer is yes. And people go, well, you can't do that. You can't read something if it's literal and metaphorical. And I go, well, maybe you can't. Because the thing you have to understand is, let's go back to a conversation quickly about an idea of colonization. We all accept that there are great Grecian thinkers, Grecian and Roman thinkers, and that they invented logic, as Socrates and Plato and Aristotle, and that is what logic is. It is logical. It does work. It is a school of thought. There are other peoples in the world, the Hindus, the Chinese, and the Jews, who had different systems of logic, which doesn't mean they're illogical, which doesn't mean they don't work. It means they are completely culturally different. We had our great Socrates, Aristotle, Plato cats as well, and they had systems of logic that are completely different than Greco-Roman logic. But we all have accepted that Greco-Roman logic is real logic and everything else is fucking crazy. Well, that's just not true. And under traditional Judaic logic, you can study something that is metaphorical and literal at the same time within that similar context of study, with it being contextual and being mystical as well. So you have to have a study buddy. Why do you need a study buddy to study the Zohar and thus the Kabbalah? Because you'll go nuts if you don't. You'll literally go off in a dark corner and become a crazy person. Because you don't have anybody to check you.
Right.
So then that takes us back to this idea that I can take a class from a place in California that hands out red fucking yarn bracelets at $300 a pop because Madonna went there, and I can understand the Kabbalah. Well, you're already way outside, right? You're already way outside. What about Jewish folk practices, though? Okay, well, let's talk about Jewish folk practices. To understand Jewish folk practices, you have to understand, again, Judaism. Because you can't separate an apple from its skin. You can't separate the seed from the pomegranate without cutting it open. Okay? Right. And so here's another reason there is no Judeo-Christian animal. Judaism has reincarnation. Now, when you tell people that, they go,
"No, it doesn't."
I'm sorry, what?
"No, it doesn't."
Okay. And you're a Jew?
No, but Christianity, they're the same.
Okay. Now, occasionally you meet a Jew who goes, "I've never heard that before," and you go, "Well, boy, did they fail you at Jewish summer camp." Okay. I would have a serious conversation with my rabbis. Okay. We certainly have a concept of reincarnation. We do not have transmigration. We don't have transmigration. I was a whatever, and now I'm a whatever, and then I'll be a whatever, right? A grasshopper and a tiger. No, we don't have transmigration. We also don't have unlimited reincarnation. Everybody continually reincarnates forever and ever and ever until you achieve something. But we do have a concept of limited reincarnation. In fact, we're supposed to have a prophet that reincarnates to tell us that the Meshiach, okay, has arrived. Like, this is so-and-so. He's back because he came back to tell us, oh, yeah, no, that's Meshiach. That's the, quote, Messiah. Yeah, that's him.
Did he come yet? Has he come yet?
No, he hasn't come yet. Or because we have certain things we're supposed to accomplish in life. So we do have limited reincarnation. So you need to understand that before you can understand certain folk practices. We have a possessory concept. Judaism has possession, but not Christian possession, which is, they're demons. We're going to make a lot of money off this movie. No.
But is it also like in the Baptist churches, like speaking of tongues?
No. So what we have is we have two primary forms. It's not the whole ball of wax, but primary forms of possession. We have positive possession and negative possession. So positive, and see, here's the important statement: positive possession. That's terribly damn important. Okay, so positive possession happens primarily through what are known as ibur, and the word ibur literally translates out to pregnancy. Okay. And negative possession happens through what are known as dibics, and that word translates out to attachment. Okay? So, ibur,
I've heard of dibics before. There was a whole thing on TikTok about dibbit boxes.
Yeah, well.
Oh, Lord.
There's whatever.
Yeah.
Post Malone deserves whatever the fuck happens to him. Okay? Kisha mir Yiddish Tukas. Okay? So, ibur, though, are departed individuals, dead people, who have something to complete. They need to do something here in the material world to complete their life cycle, to complete whatever was going on, to protect somebody. And they will ask, may I possess you? It is considered a mitzvot. It's considered a mitzvah to allow an ibur to possess you, to do the thing. Whatever the thing is, to call the wife and say, hey, the bank account key is wherever, or the will's been hidden in the wall, or hey, I needed to do this, or whatever it is, okay? And some of it's relatively small, and some of it's not, okay? So that's an idea of positive possession. Dibicum come in two kind of flavors. Spirits of the departed, who for one reason or another seek to have more life and want to get that from you by possessing you, or some categories of shadim who want to just possess you so they can be physical, because shadim are non-physical because God didn't complete making their bodies before he rested, and so they didn't end up with any bodies. So you have to understand that. Right? You have to understand that we say there are X number of blessed Tzaddik, holy people. And Tzaddik so has the root of charity, all right, and righteousness. So there are these X number of super righteous people in the world, and they often reincarnate. Okay? So that means that's very similar almost to some Buddhist practices, all right, where we talk about how lamas reincarnate. Like this Dalai Lama we have right now is technically the last Dalai Lama, and the Dalai Lama before that, and the Dalai Lama before that, which is the reason they have the tests when they're kids. They bring them items, or do you remember your cane, or you pick out of 17 sets of beads which was yours, etc. Right. But we have a similar, very similar concept of the Tzaddiks, the righteous, okay, and whatever, and there's some debate about how many numbers. Oh, there's 21 of them, or there's 17 of them, whatever, okay? So you have to understand all that. Why? Because otherwise, some of the folk magical practices make no sense. So here's an example. If you meet a stranger comes to your house, like this is an unknown individual, okay? And you allow that, you should first of all be careful about who you let into your house, because some of them might be dibicum. They might be possessed in a bad way. So what do you do? Well, they come in your house, you offer them hot food, salt, and wine. Well, that doesn't seem like a folk magic practice, Professor. Well, it is, because dibicum will not take hot food, cannot eat salt, do not take wine. So in other words, it's a test. Yes, it's generosity. Yes, it's tzaddik. Yeah, it's feeding a hungry guy, and that's righteous. But it's also, are you a fucking demon? Because the last thing we need up in here is a bunch of dibicum. I mean,
it's a fucking demon.
and then there's dibicum in the place, and then police will get involved, and even worse, maybe Christians, and the last thing we need in here are Christians. Okay? So that's a thing, right? It's a folk practice. So here's another example. You don't sew clothes while someone alive is wearing them, right? Like, let's say I lost the button off my vest. I would, what I'm supposed to do is take that vest off to sew the button on, not right. to have somebody else, like my wife comes and sews the button on while I'm wearing the vest. Why? Because we wrap our dead. We shroud them, and we sew them up in their shrouds. And in fact, for a lot of particularly men, their shrouds are their taluses. Okay? Right. So the idea is that by sewing up someone, sewing clothes on someone, we're making a statement that they're dead. And therefore we can interrupt their life. We can take part of their life away from them, or we can even cause them to die. So I've got to do it. He's got to go out on stage. Professor literally has got like 2 seconds before he has to walk out and start talking. What do we fucking do? He can't take his trousers off, and that's what we need to sew. So you do one of two things. Either A, you have them chew on a thread, and often you're told that it's a red thread. You have them chew on a thread. Mark. Hello, Mark. Mark already said it. It's very lovely of you, Mark. You get the Cupid doll. You get the prize for tonight that you said the thing in the chat that we were about to talk about. It'll be in the mail. Okay? So you chew on a thread, or you chew on a piece of food, or you drink, or the seamstress or seamster must prick you with the needle. Like, so, stab. Fuck! Oh, you're alive.
It's all good. It's all good.
Right? because that you're killing that person. We don't
Right.
name, as an example, traditionally, we don't name children after living people. Like if you're Aaron, you don't name your son Aaron because then your son inherits the rest of your life. Okay? And then you'll sicken and die. So,
Right.
not a lot of Jewish juniors. Okay?
Interesting.
But
Interesting.
but if your grandfather's deceased, we could give you, if your grandfather was Aaron and he's gone, then yes, we will absolutely give you grandfather Aaron's name in honor and remembrance of grandfather Aaron, and also in the concept that maybe you will partake of what your grandfather had in this world, which was intelligence or strength or whatever. So that's another fun. Now people go, well, that's not magic. Oh, the fuck, it's not. Okay, again, this
Seriously.
big magician calls little magician superstitious.
Right.
Okay, but also to have the mezuzah outside the door, not only to direct the spirit of God within, but to repel negative spirits. Okay.
So in the same way, just to kind of revert back, so in the same way you were able to give me a reading using, the passages in the Torah based on my birth, one of the other similarities, one of the other things that I noticed when I was doing my research, and my husband took a lot of pride in making your flyer, because he used a lot of the symbols that you're talking about today, and he positioned them at certain angles because of certain numbers, and these numbers had certain meanings, and we noticed that numbers in and of themselves are very, very big in these practices. What is that all about?
All right, so let's talk about two things very quickly. Let's talk about the Gematria, and let's talk about anagrams. And I'm going to start with anagrams. No one loves fucking anagrams as much as Jews. Okay? Like, Jews fucking love anagrams. And there are many, many things in Judaism, in Judaic culture, and even in Judaic folk practice and magic that are strange looking words. Okay? Like, what does that word mean? It's an anagram. It's literally an anagram. Okay? So, like, you have a Siddur, and a Siddur is a prayer book, but then you have the main, like what most people would call the Torah. Okay? But it has a name, and its name is broken down into an anagram of Torah, Ketuva, Badada. Okay, so in other words, it's an anagram. We love anagrams. We love acrostics. There's a psalm that's an acrostic. Like literally you take the first letters of each of the lines of the psalm and it spells out another word. We love that stuff. We love that stuff.
It's like
And
those movies, like those National Treasure movies. That's awesome.
and that's another one of the problems. Is I'm going to go study the Kabbalah because I just fucking want to, and I'm not going to learn Hebrew, and I'm not going to learn anything about Judaic practice, and I don't give a fuck about Jews. Well, you're not going to be able to study the fucking Kabbalah because it's going to be loaded with fucking word puzzles.
Like nonsensical. It's going to be nonsensical to you.
It's not going to be nonsensical. You're going to take that as a given name or a given word and not get that it's literally a word puzzle that opens up like a 13-petaled flower. A excellent book if you actually want to know about the Kabbalah. Thank you,
Hint, hint.
Rabbi Aiden Everett Steinsaltz. May your memory be a blessing. He was my Rav. And the book, by the way, is called The 13-Petaled Rose. So, in other words, these things open up. Okay? So you're going to have to learn Hebrew. You're going to have to learn things about Judaic practice. Otherwise, you're going to miss what, no offense, are word puzzles. Okay.
So again, to bring it back full circle, it's about the culture, the language, the music, the people.
Well, see, this is the other reason
deep.
that you see. This is the other reason you see so much Kabbalah being in the medieval period and after, particularly after the early history period, early modern period. And if you want to know more about this, you should check out Dr. Alexander Cummins. He can give you an education about this, and his lectures and his series and his books are fantastic. Okay. Is the reason you see a lot of Goyisha magicians and ceremonial magicians and early conjurers getting really fucking excited about Kabbalistic shit is because all of their traditions also have some word puzzle, just to use a general term, like components. these letters together mean this in this order, this is an acrostic. So then they get into this Hebrew stuff and they go, oh my God, here it is too, right? And sometimes that's a little horse before the cart, and sometimes the cart before the horse, and who's to say what influenced what. But the point is, it's still there, okay?
Right.
So in other words, this is, like, think about words. We talk about Kabbal, meaning a secret thing, okay? Kabbalistic, okay? To do a secret thing. Some of these secrets are kept in plain sight, in language, in how letters are oriented and how things are written down. So you have to have some sort of basis in a cultural understanding of it, or you're going to miss that. Sure, you might still get something out of it, but you missed all the really juicy shit.
Right.
All right? So now let's talk about Gematria. In biblical Hebrew, original Hebrew, there are no vowels. Vowels are understood contextually. So in other words, I'm talking about writing here. So if I wrote out, and I'm going to do it in English because it's easier for everybody, C and T. Okay, here's C and T on, that's written out. It's in a sentence. CT. That could be cut. It could be cute. It could be cot. It could be coot. All right, and we understand what it is within its context. Okay, obviously, oh, he took his sword from its sheath and blup the rope. That's not going to be caught or cute. He didn't cute the rope. He cut. It's going to be cut. Okay? So that's the first thing to understand. The second thing to understand is that here in America, in the modern day, our numerals are not from the same source as our letters. Right? We have Arabic numerals. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 0.
Right.
Wasn't that a fabulous, that great discovery, 0. Okay? Made all the difference. And then our letters have different origins. Okay?
Right.
In
Correct.
Hebrew, the letters are the numbers. Meaning, this is Alf and it has this value, 1. This is Bet and it has this value, 2, 5, etc., etc., etc. Okay? Which means that every word you look at can also
has a value.
Be viewed as a kind of a math addition, right? I can say this plus this plus this plus this plus this equals. So the most common occurrence of this is the letter Chi, okay? C-H-A-I, Chi, which, by the way, is the root of the name, masculine name Chaim, okay? The root of the feminine name Havala, or Hava. Havala would be a diminutive, like Tammy, right? The younger Y-I-E sound. Okay. Its value is 18. It also has the representation of meaning life. Like the letter Chi means life. In and of itself, that means life. And its number is 18. Therefore, 18 represents life. So the number 18 represents life. So people will give, Tzaddik will give charity in values of 18, divisible by 18. Right?
Wow.
I'll give $18. I'll give $36. I'll give $180. I'll give $1,800 in charity because it's life. Okay? And we will wear the letter as a, here, hold on, let's see if we can, I don't know if the camera can see this. Okay. So let me see if I put my finger behind it. That is the letter Chi. It's hard to see. There
it is.
That's the letter Chi.
Wow.
Represents life, represents 18. Okay. So this is called the Gematria. And so the Gematria is another level, particularly to study of things like the Kabbalah, and why should I do it in a serious way and not just go to the California Institute for Madonna Kabbalistic Study? Because as part of the study of the Kabbalah, there's also a fuckload of math. Here's an entire passage, okay? Or let me put it to you this way. There are people who are super into the tree of life. They're super into it. And they know that that Sephiroth is called whatever. And they know that as a system of correspondence, it relates to this color and this number and this fruit, etc., etc. But they don't know why.
Right.
Well,
It's so surface.
Right. So the reason it is that number is because if you literally take its name and assign it its Hebrew values as number values and add it together, it's that freaking number. Which means that number resonates to that Sephiroth. Which means then every time I find that number in another word, right, this word is also the same thing. Okay? Then that means that also relates to that Sephiroth and to that feeling and to that power and to that immanence into creation or out of creation. Okay? And so we have all of that. Like, let's talk about the golem for a minute. So I'm sure everybody pretty much knows about the golem. You make a guy out of clay, and you put a mark on him, and he comes to life, and then unfortunately he goes nuts, and he gets killed by lightning, and obviously...
It's a cool story.
But Mary Shelley came up with the story first. Sure she did. There are several famous, the Golem of Prague being just one. There are several famous Pragues throughout, and this is way kind of folk as opposed to, say, religious, okay? You create the Golem, he's a protector of the Jewish people, he's going to go kick the shit out of the Cossacks or who the fuck ever, the Nazis. Except the way you bring him to life, okay, is you write the word for life on his head, okay? But then you erase one of the letters, and the word life becomes a different word. It becomes the word for death, and he crumbles back into dust. So there's all this magic of letters, and the numbers they represent, and the math of that. And what if I took the word for fire, and I took the word for water, and I subtracted the value of water from the value of fire, what's the number I have left? And what word will it relate to? And then somewhere down the line you find out that it relates to, say, the value for ash or the value for steam. And you go, whoa! Okay? So there is all of this idea that some of this magic is also happening almost as a mathematical process.
Wow. That is just, oh my gosh.
And what it
That's
has
crazy.
to do with, deeply, is it has to do with the idea that everything, every substance, every person, every artifact, everything has a true name, a way it can be addressed. And that is, it's going to be its Hebrew name, and therefore also its number, right? It's 52, 119, whatever. And if I possess that, then I can command that. But also I can animate it. So you can end up with a situation like Mickey Mouse with the Sorcerer's Apprentice, where I can bring the mop to life because I know its true value. And if I know its true numerical value, its true name, then I can literally make it become animate and say, mop the floor on your own. Okay? And unfortunately, then you end up like Mickey, where you chop it with a hammer, an axe, or whatever, and then you got 2, and then they both spring up, and then you got 3, and then you got 4, and you got 5. But there are Jewish folk magic stories that almost are exactly the Sorcerer's Apprentice from Fantasia.
Right.
We made water. We needed water, and we made water because we knew the value of it, and so we had the pure number value of it and the pure letter value of it, so we created water, but then we couldn't stop it, and we fucking flooded the town. Because we didn't know a way to, get it to stop. Okay? And yes, truth in the death. So, Marius, to be fair, you're more correct, and the reason is because I'm not trying to tell everybody how to actually make a golem. I'm trying to
Yeah, please don't do that. Let's not do that.
Because first of all, you're not supposed to make a golem.
Yeah, I don't want to be held responsible for that.
Well, you're daring to put yourself in the place of God. Right? You're not bringing about life through a natural process, like having a child, okay, or planting a seed. You're saying, I can be God too, right?
Right.
But again, we have to look at the deeper situation here. I know this sounds like some party political thing, and I'm sorry that you didn't get a bunch of like super good fucking tricks to take home and, summon Dybbuk's or whatever. But the idea of how we look at Judaism, Judaic practice, Judaic culture is unfortunately through the eyes of a colonized world. And so we make assumptions. The most prevalent one would be that God is male. God's not male. That's ridiculous. How can God be male? If God is male, then that means everything that's not male is not of God. God is both. God is both and neither. God is like imminently gender fluid. Okay? Oh, Lilith is all about feminism and blah, blah, blah. Let me just tell you something. And I stand by this. I do not believe that Lilith should be the symbol for feminism or feminist activity or any of that. Lilith should be the symbol for trans rights.
Interesting. Okay.
Trans rights, gender fluidity,
okay.
androgyny, intersex.
Why that? Why so, Professor?
Because she and Adam and Lilith were both. Adam was not male. Adam was both. Lilith was not female. She was both. They were both. Okay? The reason she rebels is because she is perfectly equal to Adam. Not equal but different. She's like, we're exactly the fucking same. What's with this horse shit? Okay? When God makes, again, here's some colonialism, Eve. Well, it's not Eve. It's Hava. And we talked about that earlier. Her name means life. When he makes Hava, he does it by taking a part, not a fucking rib, a side in Hebrew, a side. He takes a side from Adam. So he takes someone that is male and female, intersex, both and neither, and he separates out a component of it and says that's now a person. Okay, so now Adam is male. Hava is female. But before Adam was both, as was Lilith. See? Lilith should be our flag bearer for trans rights, gender fluid rights, transsexual people, intersex people, all of that. Here's the other thing that I dislike about Lilith is everybody's like, oh, Lilith, well, as the witch and the mother of witchcraft, Lilith, let us celebrate her in the night. Lilith, the mother of witchcraft. Lilith, the first woman to dare to do witchcraft.
And the darker energies too, the demons and all that.
Lilith's not the mother of witchcraft. You can tell that story now and say, oh yeah, now I've decided that Lilith is the mother of witchcraft. Yeah, well, a bunch of guys at the Council of Nicaea decided my book was old and their book was new, so why don't you go join them? I thought you hated their guts, right? I thought you were anti-colonizing. I thought you were anti-colonial. I thought you were anti all this stuff. Eve, Hava, is the mother of witchcraft, not Lilith. Hava, that everybody puts down. Oh, fuck that Eve bitch, man. I would have told I'm a motherfucker. I wouldn't have. No. She's the first mother. She's the outside progenitor, not self-progenitoring. Lilith can self-progenerate. She's the first woman. She's the great feminist. She's the great bearer of knowledge. She's the first witch. Okay? Her. Give her some fucking clout instead of constantly putting her down as some sort of bullshit, anti-feminist, oppressed woman crap that you got. Where'd you get that from? Christianity.
Right.
And you accepted that when the Christian told you my fucking story, oh, we can totally trust him. Oh, yeah, he ripped off the Jews, but he's fine. Man, a thief would never lie, too. I beg your fucking pardon. Okay.
Can I ask,
yes,
what is the purpose or what's the goal of Jewish folk magic? Like when we talk about other kinds of folk magic, when you talk about folk magic, like with hoodoo and the diaspora, you're looking at magic to help peoples survive, to go against the machine, to challenge oppression, etc., etc. What's
So
the purpose of Jewish folk
so
magic?
here's where we can make a division between mysticism and magic. And thank you for asking that question, because it finally helps us center this in this conversation. Jewish mysticism, at the end of the day, is when you cut away all the, isn't it cute, cool to cause a field of cucumbers to grow, okay, etc. Let me digress for a moment. What a shock.
I don't want to say it. I don't want to say it.
Let me tell you the reason that traditionally Jews have not accepted Yahshua ben Joseph, Jesus, as Messiah. Christians say, but he did miracles. And our response is, we have had great rabbis who've been doing shit like that for generations before and after him. We have tons of stories of various righteous people who are able to do, quote, miracles. All right? And not just prophets and shit like that. Not just shit you're going to find in the Bible, like making fields of cucumbers grow. Literally. Okay? And multiple ways. There's a very famous quote about this rabbi who's very upset with a student of his because he says, you know, I knew 17 different rites to cause cucumbers to grow, and you never asked me about any but one. So he not only is stating that I know this, quote, magical thing, miraculous thing to
But
make
I could do
cucumbers.
it 17 different ways,
17
bitch.
different ways, and you never even, you don't care. You know. So Jewish mysticism is primarily going to be, when we cut away all the fat, about coming closer to God. Not becoming God, coming closer to God. Okay? And we see that, again, when we talk about the magical and the religious and how they're co-interlaced because of, you know, an ethno religion. Okay? It is that, how do I want to put this? So there are two kinds of mitzvot. There are mitzvot, there are actions that bring us closer to God, and then there are actions that keep us from going further away from God. So Jewish mysticism at the end of it is basically about coming closer to God. Jewish magic is, you know, folk magic practice is about what you see for a lot of diasporic people. Keeping somebody's boot off your neck, having enough food, facing common events,
Right.
etc. Simply, I apologize for the cursing. I don't consider it to be cursing. To me, a curse is something that would say, take. So, again, we have a concept here, a colonized concept. Cursing are bad words. Well, there are no bad words. There are words, and they're how we use them. The actual statement about taking the Lord's name in vain, as an example, means to make an oath under the name of God, and it to be a false oath, or to give testimony. I swear before God that what I'm about to say is true, and then you lie. Okay? That's what that actually is talking about in the Hebraic tradition. But I do apologize to you. It is not my intent to cause or give offense to you by the language I use.
Speaking of cursing, I don't mean
Yes.
to go off
And
the
there are
subject.
Jewish curses, yes.
Yeah, I was gonna say. So, I mean, is there like a darker form of the folk magic, or is it all good, or is it, you know, how
Well, that
does?
depends on what you mean by dark. I mean,
Okay,
again, what we're trying to get away from here are
is
these
these Christianized kinds of, yeah,
and colonized attitudes.
yes,
Okay, if it, the idea. So first of all, understand there is nothing in the Torah that says you're not allowed to protect yourself. The Torah is very clear on this. The Torah basically at the end of the day says if somebody kicks in your door and has a gun and runs in and starts shooting up the place and you kill them because your family and you are in that house, that's not murder. That
right,
is killing. Okay? But again, in the original of the 10 utterances, it is not thou shalt not kill. It is thou shalt not commit murder. And murder is pre-planned, cold-blooded, premeditated, thinking it out, like I'm going to murder somebody.
Right.
Killing happens. Killing happens in wars. Killing happens for protection. Killing happens for safety. I mean, if it was "Thou shalt not kill," then the next ordinance would be that we were all to be vegetarians. Okay, because that's still killing, right? No matter how you look at it, you're still taking a life. And not only vegetarians, but vegetarians who only eat fruit that drops and don't eat non-perennials and don't eat root tubers and things like that, because that would kill the plant.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And by the way, there are people in the world who practice that form of vegetarianism, and there are even cultures and religious doctrines and cultural doctrines that have that form of vegetarianism, where no, we only eat fruit that drops and non-perennial, et cetera, so that we don't kill the plants. So now when we talk about cursing, the idea is sometimes that the curse is the most effective. Like, I don't have any other means, right? I can't get the law involved. There is no law per se. Or that is, particularly as diasporic peoples, I have no representation in the law, right? The law doesn't give a damn about me and mine.
Right.
The law is going to side with them. They're the oppressor culture. They're the people in charge, right? I can't get a lawyer or trust the sheriff or trust whoever. So we do see some of that. Now, when we talk about malefictions, when we talk about like you should suffer because you're something not good.
Right.
Some of the best malefictive curses appear in the Yiddish language. And by the way, Marius has shared several of them in the chat. May you have a house. May you have a house of 100 rooms, and may you have a toothache in every room. In a different tooth. Okay? Like, we're very poetic about that stuff. But there are traditional curses. There is traditional work that is malefic. Absolutely. That does that. There's a lot of data that you can go out and research that suggests that the cultural depiction of the witch. Now, let me be very clear in what I'm saying. I am not saying all witches are Jewish or Jews were the original witches and that it's an anti-Semitic thing. I'm talking about imagery. Okay? I'm talking about there's some hag with a big nose and a pointed hat, okay, and she dresses like that. Those are anti-Semitic imageries. That image, which is not to say all witches and original witchcraft and traditional witchcraft is Jew. I'm not saying that. I'm saying the image that we sell, because it does double service, right? It does double service. We get to deal with those naughty pagans who won't convert to our wonderful Christianity. Oh, and there's a terrible old Jew again still. 2 for 1. Okay? So, but yeah, there are Jewish curses, absolutely.
Right.
And there are traditional Jewish workings with shadim, a.k.a. demons.
Demons.
Yeah, all
I remember.
Although they are, again, very different kinds of demons, right? They're
Gotcha.
they're not Christianized type demons at all.
Professor, this was like, oh my gosh, and I feel like we only touched we just scratched it. We got a little itch right here. There's so much more. I know there is, and like I wish we could stay on forever. So before we go though, well, first of all, thanks to everyone in the chat. There were so many comments. Everyone loved this discussion. And by all means, keep commenting, because I know Professor and I know myself, sometimes we go back and we read, some of these comments and we'll answer them separately. Is there anything you want to share in terms of, what you can leave the listener with, in terms of letting them know, like what's something you can leave them with about Jewish folk magic, Jewish folk practices, that if they learn nothing else from this live, what would you want them to leave with?
I would want you to leave with this. And it's going to be a very, very strange thing for me to say.
Okay.
Because it's not going to quote a Jewish source at all. It's going to quote a Christian source, and it's going to quote, and it's even going to have Jesus in the quote. I would say to you, in the words of Cromwell, paraphrasing here, when you come to Jewish practice, whether it is Jewish mysticism, whether it is Jewish folk magic, whether it is anything that originates from Jewish peoples, including your understanding of, quote, the Bible, of, quote, the Old Testament, even the concepts you may have rattling around in your head about Judeo-Christian, okay? I would ask of you this, to quote Cromwell, I beseech you, in the bowels of Christ, think it possible that you are mistaken.
I love that.
That's all.
I love
Look
that.
deeper. This is more complex than you may have even known about. I'm not saying go and convert. I'm not saying everything's closed, go away, screw you. I am saying, I beseech you, consider you may be mistaken. Consider you may have bought goods that were sold to you by others who are not friends of neither of us.
Mm. And I think that that's an approach that you can take everywhere with everything.
And should.
The minute you think you know something, just assume you're wrong. Assume you're mistaken and keep going.
Particularly when we are dealing with diasporic and individual group knowledge.
Yes.
I say this, like, if you think you understand African traditional religion, African folk practice, I beseech you, consider you're mistaken and study deeper. If you think, oh, I know everything there is, well, trans rights just started because trans people were invented in 1992. No, I beseech you, consider that you are mistaken. Well, this about poverty. Well, this about sex workers. Well, this about gay liberation. Well, this about the whole gambit.
I beseech you, you are mistaken.
Consider. I beseech you to just consider. That's the first stop. That's where you start. Maybe everything I've been told is not the whole story, and maybe some of the things I've been told that hasn't come from the source is wrong.
Love it. Professor, there are a bunch of people who want to know how they can get a reading with you, how they can reach out to you, what you're going to be up to. Tell us what's going on.
Well, first of all, you can reach me through my website, which is professorporterfield.com, because let's keep it simple. Didn't want anything that is easy to forget. professorporterfield.com, and you can book readings there. I do traditional playing card readings. You can also book a Torah life reading there. They take a little longer. I ask you, please, when you make a Torah life reading, you have to send me the following information: where you were born, what day you were born, what time you were born. Okay.
And what if you don't know your time? I know a few people that have that issue.
You're gonna have to talk to somebody. Ask your mom. Ask somebody if it was at least morning, afternoon, or evening.
Something. Give them something, you guys.
Give it something. If your mom can tell you whether it was in the daylight or after night, right? That at least will help. Okay. As far as where I'm going to be, very soon now, next month, I'm going to be giving a lecture for the Verdis Genii Symposium on the topic of goofer dust. I'm going to be talking at the Salem Folklore Festival about the Conjurer's Garden, which is about graveyard work. I'm also doing a series for the Cauldron Black. I am a part of a series that they are doing. They are having monthly speakers come and talk about issues relating to or surrounding the mighty dead. And in October, I will be giving my presentation for that series about black dogs, church grims, etc., etc.
Yes.
And I guess the last thing I would like to leave with is this. So those of you who have seen me before may be going, why is he wearing that? What is that?
That seems a little dress up. That seems a little theater.
And fair enough. I can admit how you may have seen that. This is a tallis. It's a prayer shawl. And the reason I wore it today is because there was the possibility that, particularly if we had kept going, that your wonderful host and I may have ended up discussing holy names. And so as a part of my cultural and religious practice, so in other words, this is no different than seeing me wearing my alekis. Okay, well, I don't have alekis, but seeing someone wear alekis or wearing their warriors or like we don't discuss certain things in certain ways without making a certain rep. So that's that.
Interesting. Thank you so much, Professor. You are the best. It is
Thank
always
you.
so much fun to talk to you.
Thank you.
Who knows? I'm going to have you back on. We're going to find another subject, I'm sure, to talk about.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it. And if anyone has questions, on the website, you can find my website. There's a place to email me, and I'll get back to you eventually. So there you go.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and share. And I will see you all next week for Father's Day. I'm going to have a very special guest on Father's Day, Professor Porterfield. I hope you can join us to watch this live. And the week after that, I'll be interviewing Ivo Dominguez about his new book. And again, thank you all for showing up tonight.
Yes,
much love, much blessings. Professor Porterfield, thank you so much. Have a good night, everyone.